talking in strategies, right? As far as investment strategies and stuff like that. Tommy brings up doing a lot of owner finance and wraps and stuff like that. I've always been against owner finance purely for the fact that if you are selling a home with owner financing, you are locking in any future appreciation. You're not going to receive any of that, right? You're locking in the price and the appreciation that the property is still going to appreciate. But if you did it correctly and you weren't trying to screw over the buyer, then that buyer is going to be able to refinance that home in no time, and you lost all that potential appreciation. So I don't. That's been my struggle with owner finance. It's not that I don't like the strategy. I just think it's a better use of a strategy for when you have a market that's more stagnant, or maybe it's starting to tank a little bit and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, you're not
Or
so.
houses that don't qualify for traditional lending standards. Old electrical, old foundations got an issue. Like where it's like you
So
can't get
you're
bank
you're owner
financing.
financing a piece of shit to somebody.
Not necessarily. It's like you have like a lot of housing stock where the we've always talked about like the housing values used for in order for you to buy that property, renovate it to the current standards, to get a loan and to sell to the retail market, you can't get it low enough. The
Right. They
prices
they
just
got to
don't.
pay you to buy the house.
Exactly. It's like I just like this house with cost today is like it's gonna take me $100,000 to bring this thing up to traditional standards. It's only worth 120, 130. It's
Oh, wait,
like,
wait, wait. He could. All right. He said no. We are buying them owner finance.
well,
Okay.
that's yeah.
A
I
hundred
was like,
percent
he didn't
agree.
like. I
Yes.
know
Yeah.
Tommy wouldn't be going for owner
Well,
finance
I'm
right now,
just kind of.
but he said like because
Yeah.
he made a comment earlier
Mhm.
of like here in the next, it's like in a few years we will walk to a home and say, tell me about the underlying note before we even look at the interior of the home. And we've mentioned this several years. Like it's the mortgage that's going to become the asset, especially in high price
Exactly.
areas where it's like, hey, what is your payment? What is the interest rate? And what can we do to work out that? Because I want to assume that note,
Yeah.
not just the house
Well, especially if you start getting
provide off.
not if we're going to keep having inflation. Inflation's not going away. Remember that the Fed's target is 2%. That's constant inflation. So what does this mean is that if you have a 30-year fixed mortgage and your payment is $1,000 a month, over the years, that $1,000, you're actually paying it down with cheaper dollars.
Yep.
You understand? Because now with inflation and everything, that $1,000 doesn't go that far.
Well,
But for
especially the
you, it's
older.
paying down a
And when
mortgage.
people understand like mortgage too, it's like I don't want to assume the 29 years left on that mortgage. Like if you got 10 like 20 years left on that mortgage, I was
Yeah.
like now like yeah, I might not cash flow a lot, but like a lot of my principal is going to pay off. I think it was like Dan Francis told us like
Yeah.
in the first 10 years of a mortgage you pay off, I think it's like almost two-thirds or over two-thirds of the interest or over half the interest in the first 10 years. Whereas it's like I'm gaining a lot of equity pay down in that house.
So
But it's one of the things you got to make sure it's like you can sustain the house as well. Because like, yeah, why the payment might be high, the rents aren't as high and you're only getting like $100, $200 on it. And like, that's not enough to sustain a property long-term,
right.
but I'm gaining massive amounts of equity into the property, but you need to be able to understand those things.
So while ideally you would want to get a property that has a loan that's 10 plus years old, so you're paying down principal, really any loan at this point with a low interest rate is still a good loan to absorb. The problem that I see is you got to be able to find the seller that needs to do that deal, right? Because right now, even the lowest price properties that we've seen, you put them on the MLS and they sell with no problem. So it's like and they can get the loan out of their name, everything, and sell for what they owe. You understand? So I think that the target of trying to buy subject to or owner finance from a seller, like it's gonna be you don't have that availability like we used to have, 7 years ago when we were buying foreclosures and doing them subject to. At this point, like they're not hurting, like they're not unless they're maybe getting close to being underwater or they owe what the house is worth or
Yeah.
something along those lines. But with the appreciation we've been having, I mean, how do you see that playing out with owner finance? Do you guys see like it's a
Well, I think it's one of those like we've experienced it of like if somebody sells owner finance, like you got to understand like why somebody's doing that and like how that strategy works because like you're tying up their name. Their mortgage is on that thing, and like, and they want to go buy a house in the future in the next 2 years, and you save them their credit. Like, they don't care. They can cause a lot of havoc to get that loan called due. and really mess with you as far as assuming that note. Where I think it does become beneficial, like we have some of these, we owner financed from an elderly couple that had multiple rental properties, still had the mortgages, and they wanted to create cash flow for themselves. We're like, yeah, I'll owner finance it to you,
Mm-hmm.
and it's own free and clear, or mortgage balance low, or whatever it may be. I see it becoming a benefit for that aspect for somebody being like, I don't want to mess with these anymore. I'm at the end of my career, but I don't want to sell them and have a ton of cash. It's like, I'll owner finance them to you. You just make payments over time.
Yeah,
So
and I mean, any thoughts on owner
Yeah,
finance?
there's always going to be people in a situation that want to use these as like a bond or an annuity type, just
Mm-hmm.
income producing. I don't want any hassles. I just want money showing up on the first of the month, and that's that. I think there's always gonna be buyers out there.
And kind
Or
of like
sellers.
a book that we've been reading, Think Again. I strongly recommend that book. But the point to this is not telling you don't do owner finance. It's just seeing like which areas you're not going to find them in, so you can start thinking about where can you find them, where can you make them make sense. And like Tommy over here, he's putting like probates, rural, non-sophisticated sellers. Like there are still markets in areas and submarkets that owner finance is a smart way to go.
for sure.
So you need to learn the strategy, you need to understand it, and just because it doesn't fit for the masses, it doesn't mean that it doesn't fit for everybody. And the few that it does fit for, it's going to be a hell of an investment that you get. Because I mean, you're absorbing now a loan that's probably 10 years old, low interest. I mean, shit. Like who doesn't want to do that?